good Friday evening. It's another edition of Sam and Chris on the Crimson Creed podcast. Chris, how you doing?
I'm pretty well, pretty well. Seeing OU win a dominant game, seeing OU win a close game, I'm doing pretty well. As much as I hate to see Texas win last week, doing pretty well. How are you doing?
Man, I'm good. I'm good. I'll tell you, I'm a little creeped out at the moment. Read a news story. Guy in Arizona, he goes out to his cluttered garage and he sees three rattlesnakes. So he calls a snake handling company, I suppose. I guess they have those in Arizona, but calls a snake handling company and they come out. Turns out he didn't have three rattlesnakes, he had 20. There were five large snakes, full-grown snakes,
Mm-mm,
and 15
mm-mm.
babies.
Nope. Uh-uh.
Can you
Nope.
imagine
Not happening.
you're going out to get the old bike out for a ride, get your old baseball glove, get something from the garage. You go out there and you got 20 snakes crawling at you.
That reminds me of that time that Dad walked into the house and said, "Hey, quick question. Which spider is the one with the red dot on its back? There's one in the garage."
Yeah, yeah, there's that one. Here's another interesting one for you. Um, this was a really impressive interception here by the U.S. Coast Guard in Georgia. Guy last week put together a human hamster wheel made of buoys and wire, and it's self-propelled by him running in it. He was going to try to outrun Hurricane Lee and go from, let's see where he was going. He was going from Georgia to get to London, England. He was going to run 4,000 miles in that hamster wheel. I don't think that's
What
happening.
else would you do with your weekend?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Well, hey, like you mentioned, the SMU game. Tell me your big takeaways from it. I know it was a good one. It was close for a little bit. What'd you think?
My my main takeaways can be summed up pretty quickly. A, on offense, we figured out a way to win the fourth quarter. That was one of our biggest things on offense last year. We couldn't win the fourth quarter. We won the fourth quarter on offense this year. Two, our defense is phenomenal. If you just look at numbers, it might not look elite, but that was an elite performance. OU holding SMU to 11 points, the lowest that they've scored in a single game since the 2017 season when they were held to 10 points in a game. And special teams, we won on special teams. We kept blowing up their attempts at punt returns until they eventually just quit trying. Anytime we returned a punt, it went well. It we won on all three aspects of the game. Can I actually tell you a story that I noticed during the SMU game?
Go for it, man.
So this what I'm wearing right now, Marvin Mims jersey. One of my prized possessions from last season. Got a Marvin Mims jersey, and I think I'm gonna have to retire it because last year OU was 3-0 when I got this jersey. I put it on for the TCU, Kansas State, and Texas games. We know how those turned out. When I stopped wearing it, OU was winning. When I put it back on, OU was losing. Well, last week I was wearing this jersey throughout the game, and it suddenly was 14-11 in the fourth quarter. So I take off the jersey. Next two drives are touchdowns and turnovers on defense. So I think you've seen the last of this jersey on game days, but it was a good win we had last week. What did you think about it?
I thought it was solid. Um, I don't know that the jinxes and the the spirit carried by the different hats, jerseys, whatever else. Don't know how much I buy into that being the cause of our fourth quarter turnaround offensively against SMU, but I guess you can't argue with the results sometimes. Seeing that Gabriel threw for 176 yards, but in that 176 yards threw four touchdowns, um, that was interesting to me because I think that speaks a little bit to the defense, the punts they were forcing, shorter fields, things like that. And the run game, it really took off too. 47 carries, 4 yards a carry. Um, it's not bad. We had some nice plays there. No real deep shots. Not sure. It was ESPN Plus. It's got its broadcasting flaws. Um, but I don't know how much of it was just bad camera work where maybe people were open downfield and we couldn't see them, or if SMU was just covering the deep ball really well, but didn't really hit any of them, which was kind of odd for our offense as it stands. But overall, really happy with the game. Defense showed up, played well. Um, and, like you mentioned, improving the fourth quarter. This game's probably a loss last year. Um, a game that close going into the fourth quarter. We weren't a
Without a
finishing
doubt.
team last year. So it was definitely good to see us come away with that one. Kind of our player spotlights this week. Peyton Bowen for me on the defensive side. Um, he really showed he belongs in the starting lineup. He needs more reps with the first teamers. Getting 4 tackles, he was really moving around the field. He had the one pass breakup that was legal down on our end of the field, or I guess on SMU's end of the field when we were on defense. Um, and he
Fourth down.
just, yeah, he flew in there for the key fourth down stop. He had the one down in the end zone also that got called for pass interference. Uh, kind of a, kind of a ticky tack call, but it's what it is. It's the game. He is going to be a star. He's a true freshman. That man is going to be put down in OU history somewhere when his time at the program is done. Who'd you really like this week for OU?
No, just to add on to Peyton Bowen, like you said, he's a true freshman. And we all know Brent Venables' opinion on true freshmen. They might play really well, but he is going to be of a mindset of if you're a true freshman, you don't really know what you're doing yet. And seeing someone who's a true freshman go out and dominate like that, we just might have our best safety since Roy Williams. Uh, but on the offensive side of the ball, I gotta tell you, someone who really stuck out to me just because of their pure consistency was Andrell Anthony. 7 catches, 76 yards and a touchdown, his first as an Oklahoma Sooner. Coming in the first quarter, that wide open play that wasn't exactly a trick play, but it wasn't a normal play. Uh, all throughout the game, he was a reliable set of hands. He ran some really solid routes. I remember there was one curl route that he ran that was just beautifully executed. Uh, he just he was consistent the whole game. The Emmett Jones effect has really showed itself in the past couple weeks with our wide receivers' consistency. Because last season, if you remember, our wide receivers they'd go out and they'd have the game of their life one week, and the next week they'd have 4 drops. They were very inconsistent, and Emmett Jones has really had a good effect on them. But I tell you, Andrew Anthony in week 1 we saw the speed, the deep threat. In week 2 we saw the consistent threat. We saw that if you don't leave him open, Gabriel will find him and he will stride into the end zone. We saw that whenever the coverage is good, he knows how to get away from the defender and make a solid play on the ball, even if it's just a 5 or 10 yard gain. He was a consistent player. He was a good player. I think after I think after this year he's going to be sticking with us for at least one more season because this is looking like it's going to be his first season really starting the whole season. So we could really have a special player in him this year.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's cool to have the core of wide receivers that we have right now, with the varying levels of experience and the playmaking ability that they all kind of share, from Anthony to Stoops to Farouk, Gavin Freeman, all these guys back and forth. Pretty awesome to see. I'm liking it. Um, after this weekend, seeing us take down SMU, see Texas go to Tuscaloosa, beat Alabama, um, I remain convinced at this point that, you know, I'll take Texas Tech out of it. Texas Tech kind of they held close against Oregon, but I don't know that I'm really counting on them to be quite the stalwart that I projected for the Big 12. I think it's going to be Texas and Kansas State that OU are contending with, for a spot in the Big 12 title. Um, OU, I think, has one of the easier paths to the Big 12 championship this year. Um, but Texas and Kansas State, no doubt, they've got talent. They're executing right now, and it'll be exciting to see. Are there any teams you've got outside of Texas and Kansas State that really pose a serious threat to OU's ability to get there?
Those are my main two, and luckily we don't have to play Kansas State. So that's unless we play them in the Big 12 championship, of course. So given how the past 4 seasons have gone, that's a sigh of relief in the Big 12 title race. But I tell you a couple teams that you don't want to sleep on. That is Cincinnati and that is Oklahoma State. Cincinnati, they've been all right. We'll see how they translate that to conference play, but right now they're 2-0. They're looking pretty good. Uh, outscoring their opponents 93-34. Uh, so they're looking all right, especially on offense, averaging over 45 points a game. But I tell you, Oklahoma State, they have not looked good. They've not looked great at all. But they've dominated the second half of their games. If you remember correctly, I think we brought this up a couple weeks ago, the 2021 season. Oklahoma State played host to Missouri State. Either that or they went and played at Missouri State. I can't remember which one, but they played against an FCS team, a bad FCS team, Missouri State, and they barely won. If I remember correctly, the score was either 23-16 or 26-16. I mean, they were getting embarrassed by a bad FCS team, and then they went up the next week and struggled against Tulsa. People were saying, "Oh my gosh, Oklahoma State's going to be horrible this year." Well, Oklahoma State ended up going 11-1 in the regular season, including a win against Oklahoma, and they were one play away from the Big 12 championship. A goal line stand against Baylor was the only reason they didn't make it to the college football playoff that year. If we've learned anything under Mike Gundy, it's that you can never use the beginning of the season as an example of how the rest of the season will go. They will almost always look bad at the beginning, but you never know how it's going to turn out. Their offense certainly isn't looking like anything spectacular, but their defense shut down Arizona State in the second half last week. It was honestly kind of impressive to watch. So I think I agree with you. Texas and Kansas State are the main teams that OU looks to face in the Big 12 championship this year. Don't sleep on Cincinnati and don't sleep on the Cowboys.
All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. Obviously, we get to go up to Cincinnati next weekend, so it'll be a good measure for Cincinnati's strength in the conference. So that's going to be cool. Looking ahead to this week, though, we've got Tulsa coming. I think both teams have some level of, they're intertwined to some extent. I know there's been a lot made of the storyline with Brent Venables and Kevin Wilson facing off after, a while on the same sideline some years ago. Kevin Wilson calling the Sooner offense and Venables the defense. So it's going to be pretty cool to see it from that side of things, just see kind of the OU reunion go through on opposite sidelines. What does the OU defense need to be looking out for from Tulsa's offense this week?
Tulsa's offense, they do their best to be balanced. I talked about this in my game preview for Tulsa on the Sooner Pocket. My blog soonerpocket.com for those listeners who might not know. But I talked about this in my preview on there. They do their best to be balanced, but they don't really succeed at being balanced. They run the ball very, very well. And they throw it almost as much as they run it. The play calling, it's about 55-45 in favor of the run. But they aren't as successful through the air as they are on the ground. On the ground, they are averaging 214 yards per game. 214 yards per game. That's more than we're getting right now. OU right now averages, if I remember correctly, 201.5 yards per game on the ground right now. Tulsa averages 214. It's a small difference, but it's a difference. Tulsa is really good on the ground. Last week against Washington, of course, they had a blowout loss 43-10, but their running back Jordan Ford, 15 carries, 67 yards, a little over 4 yards a carry, almost 5 yards a carry. He had a good game. He really had a good game. And on the season, they're consistent. through the air, I don't have as much faith in their ability because they throw the ball and they complete passes, but they don't really do anything with it. Last week, they had two quarterbacks play, and their best quarterback was 12 of 18 for 85 yards and one touchdown. It was Roman Fuller, averaging, getting 85 yards on 18 pass attempts is nothing to brag about. That's a little under 5 yards per attempt. And and so the way OU's defense has been playing, I think we're going to be fine against the air. We're not going to see a quarterback go in there and just torch us through the air. But that running attack, OU's defense really needs to prepare well for that. We've seen that the defensive line can stop the run. We've seen that the linebackers can stop the run. We've seen that the defensive backs can come up and make plays. But we need to prepare for, even though Tulsa tries to be balanced, we need to prepare for them to try and pound the rock. We were able to capitalize when SMU made big runs last week. There was that one, of course, Key Lawrence forced the fumble. Danny Stutzman recovered it, but we really need to be prepared for their ground attack because they have a good ground attack. When Kevin Wilson was at OU, he had a great running attack. Am I correct in saying he was the offensive coordinator when we had Sam Bradford and DeMarco Murray?
I believe so.
Yeah, he just had an incredible rushing attack when he was at OU, and he's carried that over to Tulsa. So the OU defense really needs to prepare for the SMU for the Tulsa, I mean, run game. What are some things you think the OU offense needs to prepare for with the SMU defense?
So the SMU defense is really experienced. They've got a lot of grad transfers and seniors on the team. They've even got a kid who transferred in from OSU. Can't remember his name right now, but he's on the defensive
Braylon
line.
Presley.
Yeah, that sounds right. Um, but comparing them to OU's defense a little bit, um, OU right now is allowing 82 and a half rush yards a game. So I think you're right from the offensive side. Um, Tulsa is going to probably try to run the ball. I think we contain it well. Tulsa's defense also, right now they're giving up about 417 yards a game, 417, 18, right in there. And I don't know that that's going to get the job done. If they give up that many yards against OU, that means that we're going up and down the field. We're converting in the red zone, and we're probably winning. Arkansas Pine Bluff, they won their game against them. Tulsa did. They held Arkansas Pine Bluff to 7 points in week one. Last week against Washington, though, they go to Washington, give up 43 points, 563 yards against Washington. Well, for Washington against Tulsa's defense. So it's not great. Watching this team also, they run a lot out of the nickel. So you've usually got somewhere between 4 and 6 guys there in the box. But here's the thing about it. Our offensive line, I see being able to really dominate their defense. Most of their defensive line sits somewhere around 6 foot to 6'2", maybe, and in the 260 to 280 weight range, which against a Bill Bedenbaugh offensive line, I don't think is going to allow Tulsa to really dominate the line of scrimmage on the defensive side. They've got some
That's
guys
an
that are
Alex Grinch defense.
yeah, they've got some guys that are situationally aware, which is good. They've gotten a few turnovers in their last couple games based on plays where it's tip drill type stuff, or maybe a receiver is overthrown in the end zone and the defender's able to make a play on it. That's good there, but overall, it's not the best secondary that we're going to face. I think it opens up some opportunities for Andrew Anthony, for Gavin Freeman, some of these guys with some speed, to be able to really torch this defense. A lot of what they do too is zone. They go back into nickel zones a lot, and that's going to give our guys a lot of room to find the empty pockets there in the zone, be able to get the ball in, eat up chunks of yardage at a time, but mix in some running as well. Um, Last thing I'll say about it, OU's offense has to be prepared to run some tempo, I think. Watching Tulsa try to handle Washington last week, um, Tulsa was really doing okay for about the first quarter. And then Washington dialed up the tempo, and it became clear that Tulsa's defense is not the strongest or most well-conditioned unit because that tempo was killing them. Washington's greatest success last week was coming on tempo drives. Michael Penix um, leading some of those with chunk plays, 10, 12 yards on passes, gathering up 6, 7 yards at a time on runs. So it's good stuff to see if you're OU's offensive coordinator. You're gonna have a good time. Jeff Lebby is, I think, with Dylan Gabriel and our running back arsenal. Um, I think we're gonna have a good time against their defense. We'll see. Um, that's kind of my big goal that I want to see OU accomplish this game is take advantage of the defense that we're facing, go out there offensively and dominate them. Allow Gabriel to open it up with the wide receivers a little bit, get some more of our running backs some showtime. Um, if there's a game where we can kind of get the offense back on track, it's not to say we're just lost, but that first three quarters against SMU last week wasn't our best three quarters offensively, and it's awfully early in the season to have a set of three quarters like that. So that's where my goals are. OU takes advantage of the Tulsa defense's opportunities. Um, what do you really want to see most this week?
So I have a couple very specific goals in mind. Two are on the offense, one are on the defense, one is on the defense. So with the offense, number one, we need to start seeing our offensive line dominate. They opened up some good holes in the rushing attack last week, but not on every play. We did just well enough on the ground to where we were winning about 70% of the time, but that 30% of the time we couldn't even get back to the line of scrimmage against a four-man rush. Uh, and that's something that I want to see that offensive line take that next step. Bill Bedenbaugh is established as one of the best offensive line developers in college football. It's not a contest, really. He's right up there with Michigan and Iowa's, Michigan and Notre Dame's, I mean. Then way down here is the next category. So we know that he knows how to get them there. It's just they need to take that next step from good status to great status and then go from great to elite because it's elite offensive lines that get you into the college football playoff. Not good offensive lines, not great, but elite. Second, I want to see better play from the wide receivers. We saw Andrew Anthony get separation from defensive backs in week 1 and week 2. We saw him make consistent catches. We saw him do a lot after the catch. We saw Jalil Farouk have a really nice play after the catch last week against SMU on that touchdown to give us a 21-11 lead. I mean, he broke that poor defender's ankles after the catch there. That's about all we've seen consistently. Week 1, we saw some really nice play from Drake Stoops and Gavin Freeman, especially. We didn't really see anything from either one of them. In fact, we saw Gavin Freeman drop a pass on drop a wide open pass that Dylan Gabriel hit. He hit him in the face mask. I mean, it couldn't have been much of a better throw. Yeah, he had to kind of jump for it, but it was right here. That's one that you expect those receivers to catch. He didn't. Also, whenever Gabriel starts running around back there, which another thing, the offensive line needs to start giving him more time to just sit in the pocket and scan the field because he's at his best when he's throwing from the pocket. Whenever he has to scramble, that's when he struggles. But whenever guys aren't open, they need to know the scramble drill. They need to start getting downfield. They need to get away from the defensive backs that are covering them. Otherwise, it's going to be another week of Dylan Gabriel struggling to find people downfield. The third and final thing I want to see our defensive line start getting after the quarterback. We've seen them dominate the run game. We know that they are going to shut down rushing lanes. That I have no worries about them against the run this season. But against the pass, they cannot figure out ways to get to the quarterback. Week 1, I attributed it to JT Shrout just getting rid of the ball quickly and them doing max protect. They weren't doing as much of that last week against SMU, but we still just couldn't get to the quarterback. The only times we were getting to their quarterback, I mean, is when we were bringing in an extra linebacker or a defensive back on a blitz. So my specific goals for the game, I want to see the offensive line dominate. I want to see the receivers start really making the plays, not just making Dylan Gabriel do all the work, but the receiver making the play. And third, I want to see us sack the quarterback. I want to see at least 3 sacks, maybe even 4 sacks tomorrow.
Well, I think if we get 4 sacks, that's probably a good sign. We probably win the ball game. But we'll see. I've got 52-10 OU tomorrow. Um, I don't know that this is really ever a close game. So that's where I'm at, 52-10. What's your prediction?
My prediction is 56-7 OU. I think at some point late first quarter, maybe early to mid second quarter, we'll give up a stupid play like a 40, 50-yard run, and then they'll just use the momentum from that to get into the end zone. But I don't think they'll even sniff field goal range again after that. I think OU is really going to shut them down defensively, uh, especially if we can get after the quarterback. If we can start forcing more turnovers too, that that would be huge for us. So my prediction 56-7 OU.
I like it. Looking to the rest of college football tomorrow, the top 25 um, games this week, it's kind of a dud um, nationwide, but I think maybe that opens the opportunity there, opens the door for some upsets, some trap games potentially. There's not really any that stick out to me more so than Penn State traveling to Illinois. Um, you know, Illinois is by no means a um, massive threat to every Big Ten team, but there's a lot of times you go to Champaign and you catch them on the right day, and Illinois will show up. They'll play ball. Um, last year, maybe year before, I know Ohio State went up there, and Illinois really gave them a pretty good run for 2.5, 3 quarters of that game. Um, so that's the big one I see as a potential upset. Are there any matchups you're looking at as teams being on upset alert?
Couple, but before I go into those, you remember what happened the last time Penn State and Illinois played each other?
Nope.
2021 season, the longest game in college football history. In true Big Ten fashion, it ended with a final score of 20-18, Illinois coming out victorious over a ranked Penn State team. Went into 9 overtimes. Neither team could seem to do anything in either overtime, but Illinois ended up coming out victorious 20-18. I I think we're going to see a good game tomorrow, Penn State versus Illinois. There are a couple others that shouldn't be good games, but I'm not going to discount them until the game's over. Number 15, Kansas State versus unranked Missouri. Missouri is 2-0 right now. They're not looking great. They're not looking good, but they're not looking bad. So that's a game that's a game I'm going to have on and I'm going to be paying close attention to. 11 a.m. on the SEC network. I think I think number 14 LSU, 1-1 LSU going up against 2-0 Mississippi State. I think they need to be careful. Brian Kelly has shown nothing, if not that he's inconsistent. He'll lose to teams he shouldn't, and then he'll beat teams that he shouldn't. So that could be potentially a good game. And my third and final game on upset alert, that's Minnesota versus North Carolina. I think North Carolina is going to end up winning by 3 or 4 scores, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they only won by a field goal. Uh, Real quick, did you know that Iowa is a 29-point favorite over Western Michigan with a 43.5 point over under?
I question Iowa's ability to score 29 points, Chris.
That would be what, 14 safeties? 50, no, that would be 13 safeties and a field goal.
Yeah. Yeah, I was going to say you talk about a 9 overtime game. Imagine Iowa being in that game against Illinois. You'd come out with a final score of 3-2 after 9 overtimes. Can you imagine that?
It- what was that game that ended that way like 10 years ago? Was it Auburn versus Mississippi State that ended 3-2?
It may have been. Yeah. That was
Gosh,
back in the that was the
that
days of the SEC, where there was no
no
offense
offense.
whatsoever. We got the that classic Alabama and um, LSU matchup that ended 9-6, no touchdowns scored.
And
That
there are people
was
who will tell you that those were a good game.
Hey, I don't think they were bad games at all. I'm a defensive minded football fan. I love to see defense kind of run a game. Because if you're running the game defensively, you're dominating. That's my kind of ball game, but
One more game I want your input
not
on.
for everyone.
Number 11, number 11 Tennessee versus unranked Florida at Florida. Tennessee's a 5.5 point favorite on a 56.5 point over under. Who you got?
I don't think Vegas is being fair to Tennessee by only favoring them 5.5 points. I think Florida is in for a um, probably a historically bad season in conference
Yep,
play this year. Um, I think Tennessee easily covers that 5.5 points. Probably covers more than that. Probably covers double. Um,
I can see that.
I don't see Florida having a chance in that one.
Yeah, I don't either.
Well, I suppose that's where we'll call it for tonight. Um, Chris, it was good talking with you, everybody.
You too?
Good being here. Make sure to check out Chris's blog, Sooner Pocket. Go there, make an account, comment, like, do whatever the
Free?
kids do on blogs these days. Good luck to OU tomorrow. Hope for a win coming away from Tulsa, and Boomer Sooner.
Boomer Sooner.